Hey everyone, let's get journaling. As you can see, I moved into my Brown Travelers Company notebook that was sent to me by Uncover Lab a few months ago. They engraved my logo onto the front of the notebook and it's aging pretty nicely. Anyways, let's get started. Today we're creating a 2-page spread for one day of journaling. Instead of using the blank pages of the insert, I'm going to search for some scrap paper in my paper collection and use these scraps to create a background for the right and left page. I wanted to put my journaling on the left page and put a brush lettered quote on the right page. I settled on using this vintage map for the right page, and I flipped through this mini kinfolk leaflet and I tore it apart last year. I know I'm horrible, and I wanted to use this black and white cityscape as the background for the left page. I was too lazy to measure out the dimensions of the left page, so I just traced the border of the notebook onto the black and white cityscape paper to get the right size to fill the page. After measuring and cutting that page up, I reached for my trusty Daiso tape runner and I put a liberal amount of tape onto it. I kind of failed the first time and I taped it onto the page a bit wonky, but the second time turned out alright. You'll see it in a second. Since my insert is getting pretty full, I had to clip the left side of the insert to keep it from folding in on itself. And the vintage map also didn't cover the entire right page, so I just taped it onto the center and left a margin around it. I was pretty reluctant in using this vintage map because I was actually hoarding it for a special spread, but since I've been doing some intense spring cleaning, I'm trying to get rid of things I don't use, and I thought I might as well use this page now than let it collect dust on my shelf. I recently destashed and gave away 10 washi tapes to my friends, and I'm really trying to use all the stationery that I have rather than buying more things I don't need. A few of my amazing friends on Instagram actually sent me some amazing stationery pieces, and I wanted to focus on using those supplies rather than purchasing more for myself because, as you've seen, there are a lot of hauls on this channel recently. My friend Erin, who is the stationery standard on Instagram, sent me a whole bunch of amazing stationery, and I wanted to use one of the vintage Denison labels she sent me. I settled on using this vibrant red tag to use as a label for the date. Since the cityscape is a little too busy of a print to write on, I brought in this craft paper so I can journal on that rather than the cityscape paper. I had to cut the craft paper up a little bit since it was a little too long, but before taping all of those elements down, I decided to grab a Sharpie and write Sunday on the Denison tag first. The little string that came with the Denison tag was a little too long as well, so I cut it down so it wouldn't hang past the spread. Before taping all the things down, I decided to plan out the whole left spread first. I knew I wanted to use a wax seal on the bottom left corner of that craft paper scrap, but I also wanted to add something to the right corner of that scrap page to nicely frame the negative space on the center of the spread. Since I had some leftover travel-themed ephemera, thought I would just place that on the bottom right corner of the craft paper. I taped everything down in place, and now it was time to work on the date. You would think I would finish one tape runner per week, but I actually don't burn through these as much as you think. I do use glue from time to time, even though I don't really like using glue, but usually these Daiso tape runners would last me about 2 months or so. Anyways, back to the date. I wanted to use a combination of stamping and brush lettering, so I'm using this cheapo wooden stamp set that I got from a random art store in my town, and I'm going to use that rubber band hack that I've shown you before to get even spacing between the letters you're stamping. I'm using this Versa Magic Black ink, which happens to be the messiest ink ever because it always gets on everything, and I had to clean up a bit, but after I cleaned up, I got my Pentel Aquash brush pen filled with Sumi ink, black Sumi ink, and I just scripted out 26 under the stamping that I just did. I ended up changing the elements that I was going to put at the corners of the craft paper scrap, and I ended up layering 2 different washes you'll see in a few seconds. I'm going to use a red classic-y washi and this brown washi. I don't remember where it's from. And I put that on the left corner, and then I'm gonna put the wax seal on the right corner instead. Wait, I totally lied. I actually ended up melting the wax over the washi tapes on the left corner rather than the right corner. I decided to leave the right corner blank so the left page as a whole didn't look too busy. Honestly, melting wax onto envelopes and spreads is my favorite thing ever. I feel like I talked myself into putting a wax seal on each spread, even though it doesn't really have a purpose on this spread. I know it makes sense to add wax seals onto envelopes because it keeps the envelope shut, but in this case, it's just for my enjoyment. Anyways, On the right side of the spread, I wanted to script out the quote, "We travel not to escape life, but for life not to escape us." But rather than simply scripting out the quote, I wanted to stamp the other words out so as to add more visual interest to the page, as well as to emphasize certain words from the quote. I had to plan out which words would be stamped, as well as pencil in a guide on the right page so I would know that the whole quote would fit on the page. As much as I love stamping and using my wooden stamps, I feel like this took forever. Since I wasn't directly stamping onto the map, it took even longer because I stamped the words onto the craft paper first, and then I had to cut each word out and tape those onto the page. In hindsight though, I'm glad I did that because the craft paper word cutouts really tied the whole spread together since I used craft paper on the left page as well. Once I finished stamping, I scripted the remaining words of the quote on the page with my Pentel Aquash brush pen filled with Sumi ink. The brush lettered words were the words that I wanted to stand out in the quote, and I think the contrast between the brush lettering and the stamped words will really make the brush lettering pop. I actually stumbled upon this quote while I was on Pinterest. That's right, I have a Pinterest account, and if you want to see what I've been pinning lately, I've included a link to my page in the description bar. Wow, shameless plug is over now. I actually don't know who the author is for this quote, so if you do know who it is, please let me know. Since I've done a lot of traveling within the past few months, I thought this quote really resonated with me, and I think a lot of people should approach the concept of traveling through this lens because traveling isn't just about escaping your life, but rather a way of enriching your life. Whoa, that went in a different direction. I'm sorry. This philosophy class is over now. Back to the journal with me. Once I finished scripting the words out, I just taped each of the stamped words onto the page, and I even changed my mind one more time and I put a piece of ephemera on the right corner of that craft paper scrap. I really am indecisive. I thought that the top and bottom of the right page were too plain, so I got one of my favorite washi tapes, which is this red grid tape from Artbox, and I just placed it at the top and the bottom edges of the page. I didn't tear the tape since I wanted clean edges this time and I had to use my scissors, but I think it still turned out alright. Sorry, I'm totally blocking the screen with my head. And then I took out this empty washi tape which has clips on it, and I'm gonna cut out this tiny brass one, not the gold one, the brass one, and I'm gonna fussy cut it and put it at the top of the page so it looks like the clip is holding that map piece of paper. At this point, the spread is pretty much finished. I'm just going to journal with my J. Herbon pen, which is not actually a fountain pen, but it does take fountain pen ink. I have red garnet ink from Faber-Castell in it right now. As always, I'm going to finish the journaling off camera. So this is what the final spread looks like. It's quite simple, and I like the final color scheme of the spread. I think brown and red and black look quite nice together, and it really created a vintage feel to the spread. The brush lettering quote is eye-catching because of the stamped words, and I think the vintage map tied the whole travel theme spread together. As always, if you like this video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!